Hey everyone, welcome to the Mass Construction Show with today's guests, Jon Desmond of Cox Engineering, Chris McPhearson of Central, and Mike Weber of Gaston Electrical. We are sitting down for the 2025 outlook. We have three subcontractors, mechanical, electrical, and drywall. We're going to sit down and find out what they're seeing, what they're hearing from general contractors, what they're hearing from owners, what about labor, what about shifting markets, large projects versus small projects, institution versus resi, all the kind of things. We're going to cover them all the kind of things. That's kind of lousy English there, Joe. But we're going to cover a bunch of topics is a long way of saying that. Don't forget, today's show is brought to you by Central, commercial carpenters, and supporters of our conversations. Enjoy the show. Hey, Chris, Mike, and John, welcome to the Mass Construction Show. I was quite excited to get a whole group of people, and as I was telling you beforehand, just got off the phone with someone, and I mentioned we were doing this, and they were excited already to listen. So hopes is this will be a great show. What we're going to do today is we're going to do an outlook for 2025, and Chris made a good point. Maybe we peek into 2026 a little, if you guys have the data on that front. But let's start with Mike. Mike, what markets are you seeing the most activity in? Because it seems like things are bifurcating a bit at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, by the way. Currently, not a ton, but generally hospitals are busy. Universities are building. We're seeing some more high-rise residential stuff. In the union market where we live, there's probably a little less of that residential stuff, but end-user buildings, so hospitals, universities, higher ed.
You said you are seeing more in the...
A little bit of resi stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're seeing some more of that, specifically downtown, at least we're looking at some stuff, let me put it that way. And it feels like it's going to move. But when you look at the other sectors that we've been working in for 20 plus years, they're much slower.
Okay. I probably should say for folks that are outside of the market, Mike is with Gaston Electrical contractor, John is with Cox Engineering, and Chris is with Central Ceiling. So we're dealing with the drywall trade and electrical and mechanical. And so Mike's speaking about what he's saying there.
You guys agree?
Yeah, and I'm also starting to see more corporate stuff start to pick up on the drywall and ceiling end. Not huge, not what it was a couple years ago, but there are companies that have committed to their leases and things like that, and they're making updates and they're making investments in their space. Again, not to the scale it was, but it's picked up over the last couple of years.
John?
Yeah, the one I'd add to that, we do not do much in the public market, but we've talked to a bunch of GCs that say that that's pretty robust, and we're creating strategies to get more into the public work, because it does seem like an opportunity. And as you guys are mentioning, with the life science really drying up, you really got to be creative about expanding the markets, I think.
When you talk public, just real quick, is it schools?
Yeah.
Yeah. MSBA, I'm involved in, my hometown, trying to build a school there. And I think they admitted 22 schools into their program this year, which is a big number. And they've got a lot of money to be spent in that space.
Yeah. Is anybody capitalizing on Rhode Island has some huge dollars going into school systems right now?
We're not currently capitalizing on it, but we're very aware of that as well. And we're, again, similar. We're trying to create some strategies to go where the work is. And if the work's in public and it's in Rhode Island, then we need to be there.
Okay.
Yeah, we've done a limited bit so far. We've been doing more chasing than catching, but there's definitely work there.
Yeah.
Yeah, historically in Rhode Island, with the union jurisdiction for us, all of our electricians need to be licensed in the state, and we don't have a workforce there currently. So we've had customers proactively ask us, hey, can you come bid this job, look at this job, good-sized projects, and to date we haven't been able to figure out a strategy to kind of execute on that, but it's certainly an option.
Yeah. I've been seeing just a lot of kind of almost more winners and losers right now. Like I'll only say the positives, but you see and it matches up with what you're saying, like Walsh Brothers doing very well, Bond Brothers doing very well, some of the public folks doing very well, but one public company in particular, I forget who I was chatting with this about, was saying, we used to see it was 2 to 3 bidders. They do a lot of schoolwork. He's like, now it's 7 or 8. So I have to imagine it's getting a lot more competitive in that public side. I don't know if you guys it sounds like you're seeing that, Chris.
We're definitely seeing it public side and otherwise. Both as like a filed sub-bid trade on the ceilings, it's very clear who's out there, and the numbers are definitely up. And so we're seeing it at the trade level and the GC-CM level, depending upon the delivery method. And it's not just public construction. I think we're seeing a lot more what we refer to as multi-bid, where our clients are competitively bidding against, or at least competitively getting sub-pricing in the market on other project types too.
Are they being aggressive because they can be, or are they being aggressive because they have to be to make numbers work? Do you have a sense? Or do
from the
any of you guys?
From the end owner perspective?
Yeah, where an owner's saying, okay, you know what, give me 5 bids on this. The market's tight. Let me see what I can get. Or is it, hey, put this out to as many people as we can. We got to get the number down to here to make this work. Do any of you guys have a sense on that?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
For sure. I think there's more from the contractor side, as no one wants to see their sales go down. So I think they're bidding on more types of work. I've also seen, we've bid some tenant fit out work recently, and some of the names of some of the competitors are pretty new and very small shops. Probably a guy with a truck and maybe subcontracting some of the labor out. But yeah, 7 or 8 bidders on some of that work.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I think, excuse me, I think the end users kind of know also that times are a little bit tighter now than they were 2 years ago, a year ago. Backlogs that we've had for years we're all eating into them. So, if I'm an end user, I'm saying,
not?
hey, I want the most qualified, lowest bid.
Yeah.
So get it out in the street.
Yeah, that's why I ask. So it's really flipped from, hey, can you find 3 people to give me a number, to let's get as many as we can, right? I wish I was hitting record when you guys were chatting outside, but just talking about, a particular job where the owner got to the number they needed to be at, and then it just kept going. And then they ended up, where there was enough competition in there that drove the price down even further, which is a pretty bleak prospect for not the owner's side, but from the contractor side, right?
It's telling of the times, right? We're all looking for work.
Yeah.
So it is, it makes sense.
Are you noticing, so that's kind of market perspective where you're seeing the action happen, but how about just project size? The classic, you look out the window and you don't see very many cranes. Are you seeing project size smaller?
Our average job is definitely going down. I think in some cases the bigger jobs that we're pursuing if before we were pricing it 2 or 3 times, now it's 3 or 4 revisions, and sometimes there's a gray area in terms of what that budget is. It might just be, please change this, or can you look at it this way? So there's still some big jobs in our kind of pre-con and bidding process, but the jobs we're winning are certainly, the average size is going down.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're still looking at some sizable work, mostly in that budgetary stage, trying to get to a number or make the owner say go. But the core shell developer market is slow. They're few and far between. They're getting these buildings ready to be permitted and have a price point, but they don't have a tenant yet. So no one's building them. So generally, there's less to look at in the large scale work. And that's why we're all seeing the job sizes decrease, because there's a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, which is the kind of follow up there. Are the big jobs even? Do you feel like it's more of an exercise at this point?
Yeah.
Like when you're seeing these big ones come in, or like, okay, they're putting us through our paces, but you don't have a very high degree of confidence that this is going to go.
Well, I think the comment about not having a tenant, I think a lot of developers, I don't think there's much spec development right now, right? I think we saw that over the last 3 or 4 years, and I don't know what the square footage number of empty space is, but I think there's plenty. So I don't think you're going to see that spec development. I think a lot of these people are waiting for tenants.
Yeah, because that was the news lately, right? Didn't South Station landed a big tenant? I think recently.
I read I don't know how big, but
Yep.
but they've got a couple of smaller tenants for sure. Maybe it's a floor here, half a floor there. But that's a big tower, right? With
Yeah.
I would think the majority of it is still vacant,
Yeah.
other than the hotel/residences, whatever going in there. So
Yeah. And what's just kind of your mental approach on those big ones where you might have a sense that, hey, we're doing we're doing an exercise here, but it's not real, probably. Is that more of, okay, hey, we're going to put in this effort and maybe we build a relationship so 3 years from now, we have something? Or do you get to the point where you say, you know what, we're not even going to, I have to imagine it's a lot of energy and dollars that go into pricing a big job. Do you get to the point where you're like, you know what, this probably isn't going to happen. Let's go after the medium and small stuff that we know we can get now, rather than spend all this capital on pricing a job that isn't going to happen.
I think one way to look at that is in the go, no-go decision when pursuing a job, the likelihood of it starting is now a conversation. That's not something we talked about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I would say we're definitely interested in working with those partners and helping those general contractors and developers get the right pricing, even if we know it's a multi-year step. If we feel like that's part of what we do is try and get good information for those people to make the right decisions. I would say more so now we're very willing, when we're looking for so much work, to do that more. I would say 2 or 3 years ago, when we had a kind of a capped labor pool, we couldn't take on much more work. That's probably when we were a little more hesitant. Like, we can help you with a number, but that's your schedule. We don't even have the manpower to do that job. So that's when we're making the phone calls saying, I don't think we're the best person to help you with this.
Yeah, I agree with John. The way we kind of look at those things is that we've built relationships over the years, and they depend on us for, hey, they're chasing a job for a developer, for an owner, and it's incumbent on us to help them with that. Because it is a relationship business, and they depend on one or two key subs to get some good pricing on to try to get this job to move forward. So I think it is incumbent on us to, like you said, okay, this is going to be maybe 2 years out. It's going to start in 27, but let's price it in today's dollars, give them what it really is, try to help them out if they need to cut costs. And it's also, you get involved in a project that early, you can help steer a budget, right? And we don't see, it's not like it's awarded to us, but we can say, hey, we can redesign this, or we can change this, or do you need this, to really help, if they have a money issue with that. So, yeah, that's how we approach it.
I think to your point, also, in my experience, there's also now a lot of the customers are asking more than just the budget. Is they're legitimately looking for other ways that they can make a job go. They're asking for more schedule input. They're asking for different things that we can bring to the table, what can be prefabbed, so that they can look at the job differently, because it's competitive for everyone. So when we have the capacity, we're happy to pursue a long-term possibility.
Yeah, if you have the capacity.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the caveat, right?
Yep. And is it as simple? Obviously, scheduling, approach it differently, prefab. Like, are they reaching out to you for value engineering to try and get to where they need to be as well?
In my experience, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the us and our best competition proactively pursue those value engineering ideas, even without being asked.
Yeah.
Because you're making yourself, you're understanding the job better. You're helping them push schedules. You're helping them get to a number that's maybe below what's on the design documents. So yes.
Yeah. How much pressure is those big jobs coming off the table? And what I kind of mean by that is, okay, if you have 6 big jobs going in the city, that's thousands of labor hours. It's thousands of hours on, PMs and supers and foremans. That all has to go somewhere. That gets squeezed, and now they're pushing out to the smaller stuff. Are you seeing people have to go aggressively after any of the slim pickings on the big stuff because they have, hey, I have 65 people I need to put to work, and I can't do that in tenant fit out jobs because when am I going to win those? And are you seeing people kind of almost being not irrational, but like
some cases,
hyper?
yes.
Or irrational.
Okay, good. Oh, all right, good. Yeah. So this is that's a yes.
Yeah, so we were talking outside a little bit about this. Yeah, we've seen the bigger, more high-profile job, the few labs still out there, the development work still out there. We're seeing the margins very, very tight. A quarter less than what we were seeing a couple of years back. And as we kind of said, but just because us at Cox, we see someone taking something very, very thin, their spreadsheets are a little different. They might be looking at it like they have a good number, but we're seeing there's a lot of pricing pressure, especially on the bigger work. There's pricing pressure on almost every job, but the bigger work, very competitive. And I don't know what the strategy. There's generally a couple of strategies, right? You can take work at very thin margins and keep a labor pool and keep your staff, or you can retract a little bit, and that's another strategy. Where we sit, these are big jobs with a lot of man hours, and there's a fair amount of risk on these projects. So to take them too thin, especially when they might start, 9 months, 12 months from now, and the market could be a little different. It's you got to be pretty confident that that's the right strategy for you.
That's a very good point, right? Because it's not like you're taking it in the immediate, right? So you take that, and then 9 months, 9 months from now, you've got this dog that's dragging everything else down.
At least on the bigger developments work, because they take 6, 9, 12 months in the pre-con phase. So yeah, a lot of that work is 26 work, and I guess we'll probably talk a little bit about what we see the future market. But I think one of the reasons it's slow right now, we had the election cycle. I feel like regardless who's going to win an election, everything always tightens up for 6 months before that. And then you had the interest rates that have been challenging for over 12 months. So I think that was kind of the double whammy all summer. We were seeing work this summer. We were rebidding things 4 or 5 times, and it just kept dragging on and dragging on. It felt like no one really wanted to make a decision. And I think, it's only been 2 months since November, but I think it's already showing trends of loosening up a little bit. So again, I don't know where we'll be come this summer, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be picking up.
Okay. So it seemed like there was some agreement when I mentioned that there might be a little bit of irrationality happening in the market?
It's always hard to know what somebody else's strategy is. And I think John outlined the basic choices pretty well. Is you can get real competitive and try to hold your volume, or you can give up volume and deal with the pain on the business end of it. And that's a spectrum for everybody that everyone's going to look at a little bit differently. Central's definitely going to be slow this year. That said, I think I'm becoming more optimistic now looking forward than I was 6 months ago. I am hearing more optimism from customers when I talk to them, and that helps, especially as you're looking at jobs way out into the future and planning about 26 and beyond.
Yeah. Is that inherent, though? I feel like last year, early in 2024, you were talking to people when it was a little slow, and they're like, oh, yeah, but first quarter 25 looks great, right? And now we're in the first quarter of 25, and it's like, is there some... yeah, no one has a crystal ball, but I wonder if there's some of that optimism that I guess you need to have.
I can remember, 2009, 10, and 11, there wasn't much optimism. So, so I don't know if it's inherent. I agree with these guys, and generally speaking, some people are taking jobs to keep some people busy. Yeah. We don't need practice, so no one wants to do anything for free. But to make a little less on a job, but still make money, we're all for that. I think the third component, other than retraction and just keeping people busy, is also getting more efficient with what you do, right? So target a job, take a calculated risk that, hey, we can figure out a better way to build this mousetrap, whether it be prefab strategies, labor strategies on site, whatever it may be. I think there's another option there too that is kind of in the take it tight. But I think we're all looking at work like that, and that's just a little bit of grinding. So I think we talked about it a little bit outside too. Is it's been really pretty darn good for 8 years ish, more.
Yeah, close to
even
10.
before that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been pretty good. So I think a lot of us just need to kind of buckle up a little bit and grind a little harder.
Yeah.
And I think if your whole team is grinding a little bit harder, and whether that be from estimating to sales to operations, obviously, you can make some of this stuff work. I've seen it happen before. We've the three of us lived through a pretty crappy time. 08, 09,
08,
10.
yep.
Even 11 wasn't great. But guess what? We're all still here.
Yep.
We all made a little bit of money, and it worked out. So
Yeah,
this isn't as bad as that.
Yeah. No, and there's I think what you kind of alluded to, there's a saying that I'll butcher it or a quote that basically that poverty creates genius. Like when you don't have the means, you become a lot more creative in finding ways to make things work. So it sounds like that's part of the response as well, right?
It has to be.
Absolutely. The way I always say it is when we get slow, we get good. Is everybody's got less on their plate, so they're able to do it better. And whether that's the office end of it or the field is, when it's just our best field force out there and it's people that we know and trust and they can have the work to run, they can go faster. There's no one in our company or else on the job site in their way. Is that the whole team performs better, and that helps when you have to make those tough decisions about where your line is in terms of how aggressive you're willing to get.
Go ahead, Jon.
I was just going to say, we all love it when walls go up really, really, really fast.
Yeah, if you could build ceilings and walls faster.
It's our favorite thing.
That's the fun thing about being in the middle of every sequence is where we're yelled at from one direction or another. We're not going fast enough, or we're going too fast. But
I love it. All three of you spoke about kind of shifting markets to where the work is. Are you seeing your clients, the clients being general contractors, are you seeing them move markets?
I think what I've seen just from a couple of my customers is that they're getting more into the public work. Because there's a fair amount of it, right? And but I haven't seen too much, or they're expanding their geography is what I've seen as well. New Hampshire, Rhode Island.
I haven't seen that. Maine. I've done
yep.
quite a bit in Portland for GCs
There you
and
go.
Massachusetts
There's work up
GCs.
there.
So, but I haven't, the market in Boston as far as like who's building or who's going to build is probably the same. It's always been the same with healthcare institutions and then financial and all that stuff, biomed obviously. So I don't think that's changing. I'm seeing more geography and I'm seeing public. So, and not everybody.
Interesting.
I'd add that I've talked to some friends at general contractors who are also looking geographically, but pretty far outside. They'll have a client who's a great client in Boston and is doing some work in Nashville or something, and they're considering opening offices and chasing work in other areas. So I think they're getting pretty creative with the same strategy, going where the work is.
Yeah. I mean, you see two in particular, like JMA and NEI, both really spread their geography pretty wide based off of client need, right? Florida, North Carolina, DC,
Smart.
Texas,
Right.
I think that becomes do you feel like that becomes a different business when you expand that much, or a different way to run your business?
Central really hasn't done much of that. We'll pursue some work. We've done a lot of work. I mean, some people consider Western Mass a different market. So, and then we get one of the smallest states in the country. So, it depends on what scale you're talking about. Running one job isn't a problem, but if you're going to build a critical mass, then it's to some degree a separate business. If you're really operating somewhere else,
It's certainly a different business unit, right?
And culturally, right? I mean,
Yeah, and I think it's probably a little bit easier if you're managing subcontractors as opposed to being the subcontractor. I'm not saying it's easy; it's just easier.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the general contractors that I've seen be successful in other parts of the country usually did it because of a customer to start, and then they grew it from there. Hired some good people in that area, familiar with the market, and then gone from there. And we've seen, like you mentioned, a couple, but there's others that are having success as well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a good point, right? Because the GCs aren't hiring labor. And I think that changes drastically, right? Now you're managing material deliveries and labor force, and probably a lot more challenging to be a multi-state subcontractor versus, and obviously, to your point, Massachusetts, who said Massachusetts is small, but yeah, New England is almost like a state in itself, right? So I think going to Rhode Island is not, I don't consider that working in another state.
Yeah, but, in one comment that we're all union contractors, right? And so at least on the pipe and plumbing side, it is a different union in Rhode Island than it is in Eastern Mass here.
Yep.
And it's a different union in Western Mass, and it's a different union in New Hampshire. So there's a lot of logistical challenges. It's I mean, with the right strategy, you can overcome anything, but it's not as easy as like Mike said, bidding some work and then realizing you don't have licensed electricians in the state, right?
Yeah.
So,
no, for sure.
And similar challenges with some of the other, further out geographies we're talking about, right? Because then you're looking at union labor and right to work states, and it's different when you have to supply all the labor, I think.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's a lot more people that we would need to find or move than a CM would have to pursue work in a different market.
Yeah.
I agree with both what these guys said, but also I have seen it be successful for specifically electrical contractors that I've either been in peer groups with or that have successfully navigated that. So it's not impossible. It's a strategy, right?
Yeah. Do you think it's just having the right systems?
I think that's part of it. I think it's people. This business is all about people. So if you have the right people, I think you can do anything.
How about negotiated work? Is it actually, before we even go there, just if you're comfortable with this, I mean, everybody is down, right? And I'm not looking for dollar values, but like from a rough percentage point, where does 2025 look comparatively to 2024, understanding that you'll probably still continue to win work? Do you guys have a sense? I mean, is it a 50% haircut? Is it 20% hair? Like, are we, how drastic of a shift has it been? And you can say roughly. I don't want you to give you too much of your business, but
I've still got some hope that I can change the story, but right now we're projecting to be about 25% off.
Yeah, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I just was thinking probably 10%-ish. But
it's pretty good.
There's also a fair amount of work that will happen this year that's not awarded yet, too. So
right.
From a strictly construction standpoint, we're probably 30% off. But we also have a rather robust service group, and that'll grow.
Yeah.
And then our equipment manufacturing that'll be steady or grow as well. So
yeah,
we're a little diversified, so it lets us be a little pickier on the construction work, and
yep.
our palette for risk is probably less than others. So
yeah, and obviously it's projection versus a fixed number from last year, and you land one job and then now you're up 5%, right? That's it, or something that you think is on the books goes on hold, swings the other way. But just so I think people listening would be like, okay, well, we know it's slow, but what does that mean? But for argument's sake, put it in the middle and say it's around 20%.
Yeah, and I think in Local 103, I roughly there's 900 journeymen on the book, 100 or so apprentices, another 100 or so technicians. So about 15% of the workforce is unemployed roughly right now.
Okay,
and that it's a lot. But
yeah.
It feels like a lot too, right? Even
Yep.
for us, we've contracted in the field, and some of those people have been really good, craft workers. But, when you're out of work, you're out of work. So,
yeah, that's good, because that was kind of where I was going next. Like, how about everybody?
we're at about 75% of the staff we were at a year ago today in the field.
Yeah, I think I might be slower than that comparatively year over year. I know it's tricky from when I talk to or hear about competitors. I think that there's a pretty big spectrum in terms of some people are real busy and some people are real slow. My general sense is that the employment at the carpenters is in the 90s, but it's not 97 like it was, or whatever that number had been.
And did you say the hall
There's
number,
good people
John, or were you
available.
talking Jaws? I'm sorry.
That was just us at Cox.
You have a sense?
I have a sense that I think on the 537 pipe fitting side, it's there's not a lot of available labor still, and in the sheet metal, there's some people to be had.
Yeah. I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but so workforce is there's available workforce. Let's say that where does prefabrication fit into this mix of the comment about becoming more efficient, making numbers work more, having doing work in a shop with more efficient labor, like is that what's kind of the state of the union for the three of you as far as prefab being an answer to labor / profitability / getting a job? Like, I'm not sure whoever kind of feels most comfortable.
I think we all do it pretty well, so go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't say that the market changes our approach to prefab. We're all in on prefab. A lot of the reasons we are so into prefab is really the schedules on the projects. Especially when you look at the bigger core shell projects. I mean, you have a couple weeks to load everything up into a penthouse with a tower crane, and if you're not prefabbing, you're just not doing it. So I wouldn't say it changes. If anything, when the labor's tighter, we're trying to shed as much work into the shops just to make sure that we can hit the schedule. So for us, the market getting a little softer doesn't really change our strategy. It's something we're always going to be focused on and trying to get better at every day.
But before you go, Mike, does prefabbing locally in your shop make things easier if the hospital job in New Hampshire comes up? Does that open the door to say, like, it might be a little harder on the drywall side, but on the mechanical side, does that open the window where you're like, okay, yeah, we have to have outside labor, but we can do 20% of the work in our shop here? Does that play into the at least allowing you to look a little closer, or if you feel it does too, Chris, please chime in. But
it's sort of a double-edged sword. So yes, I don't want to say I don't know that much about the contractors in some of these other markets, but I think that the Boston contractors probably do a better job prefabbing. But we also have higher rates than a lot of those other markets. So while we're able to save some field hours and be more efficient in our shops, we're doing it at a premium versus what there might be stick building something in Rhode Island or New Hampshire for.
Okay, that's a good point. Didn't think of that.
Just to get back to your original question,
Yeah, the prefab things.
Our approach to prefab is full speed ahead, and it has been for years. Does it help us get more aggressive? Yes, but we've kind of been using that already. Through the last couple of years. For Gaston, it's our, it's not our largest job site, but it's our most consistent large job.
That's a good way to look at it.
So, and the efficiencies we're picking up, and we're getting better. We're hiring. I mean, we are actually hiring people in that, in CAD and BIM right now. So, we're looking for people to help out, because what we're doing, we feel like benefits our field staff, benefits our jobs, benefits our customers, meets schedules, which I think is probably the point that John brought up is even larger than cost.
You have no choice.
You have no choice. Yeah. It's a need to have on almost every large job we're looking at, as opposed to a nice to have. We'll continue to improve there. Will it pick up margin in a bid? Maybe a little bit, sure. But really, it's the confidence that we can have that says, hey, look, if we have two weeks to rough this floor, we do it old school, it's 5 weeks, but no, 2 weeks we can do that. That's where it helps us. It also pre-plans the job, so you're forced to think about things well in advance.
That's what I was thinking about. I think what we're doing is Central's really doing a lot more kitting than we are like traditional prefab, in the sense of like the volumetric or modular component. Although we're doing some of that, But when we're on site now, we're starting much faster. We don't need as much time to get the crew comfortable to get in rhythm when stuff's coming out that they need for the next day, the next week, and we're able to march a lot faster than we would have been a couple of years ago.
Mm. Are you seeing? I know I was out at your shop last week, John, and you seeing more co-locating at people's shops to have multiple trades build stuff out?
The multi-trade racks, I really haven't seen that in a couple of years.
Okay.
So me personally, I haven't seen it as much.
We're doing it currently on a hospital project.
Head walls.
Head walls, exactly.
Mm.
But we don't. It's probably the third or fourth time we've done it in the past 5 years.
Mm.
It's a requirement on this one, and it's working out okay.
Mm.
We'd love to do more of it. So
Yeah, is it happening at your shop or where is it?
no, it's happening. I think at the plumber's shop.
Okay.
I haven't been there, but yeah.
And I know you probably head walls, right? A lot.
Yeah, that we've seen the same kind of thing. Head walls over a series of hospital projects. In some cases, we've framed them at somebody else's shop. In other cases, we've framed them in our shop and shipped them. It's been a little bit different depending upon the job and who's got capacity at their prefab facility.
Mm. How about any tech on the prefab side of things? Have you guys been bringing more tech inside? Like I've already spoken with Chris about, he's got his stud roller where they're, putting a model in and printing and cutting studs, not printing, rolling and cutting studs. He's not 3D printing yet. Any tech you guys been incorporating to up the efficiency or?
We love expensive software. I don't think there's a software out there that costs less than 6 figures these days. We've implemented Stratus this year, which is it's a prefab tool. The BIM department will start with it, and we'll take the entire model, break it down to packages, and that rolls right through the shop floor and onto the trucks and onto the job site. So it's been a pretty cool tool for us to really go back to the pre-planning part. The teams are pretty good at the prefab, but when you can actually spool exactly what you have, and you literally have a software that you're sending out like a giant Lego set to your foreman. It's been a cool tool. Yeah. And then on the equipment side, we're always looking at what the most modern manufacturing equipment is. We're probably looking at a little more on the manufacturing products than we are on the prefab. But
for the air handlers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you guys had that welder?
Yeah, so
What
we
was the name of
we
that?
call it a cobot, but it's an automatic spool welder that can hit 4 different
Pretty wild.
pipe stations. But it's been nice, instead of having someone kind of bent over, facing the smoke all day, they're sitting behind almost an iPad, and it still takes a talented welder to do a good
Run the
weld.
machine.
I'm not out there welding a pipe.
I'd like to
but
see
at the end of the day, that person's probably going to the gym after work, right? And they're not kind of compromised positions all day. But then there's other guys that's what they love, though. They want to be sitting there and with the
shield over their
on,
face,
burning 8 hours a day, and we love those guys too.
Nice. You guys, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's been a journey. I think the electrical trade's probably been behind the other mechanical trades when it comes to prefab for years. Their drawings are also candidly a little bit easier to prefab, where we have to actually design it all ourselves. So we get a set of documents. I know the Revits and all that and the spooling that we do. It's time consuming and it's costly, right? But the only
Costly with design hours or okay.
And not only just like what the general contractor customer requires, but then we're taking those drawings, breaking them into neighborhoods, spooling them by neighborhood, by pipe rack, getting them into prefab. We built our own app a year and a half ago, to track that process because we couldn't find one that we liked. So we have, we QR code everything. And, if our foreman wants to know where his prefab is, he can look on the app and say it's being built, half of it's ready to go out the door. It's on the truck, whatever it may be.
That's nice.
So that was
It's like you got an Amazon package, and but it's the foreman looking at their delivery.
100%.
It's in Baltimore.
So that's worked out pretty well. But we're always looking for more. Again, our people are talented, and they think through the processes really well. I still think that there's more technology we need to be utilizing. And every time I look at something like another product that costs six figures, like it doesn't feel like it would fit, right? Most of them, candidly, are for the HVAC pipe fitters. Those guys, they've been around longer doing the prefab.
On our end, the stud roller is really the technology end of it. We've used a couple of different platforms, things like Airtable as an example, which is almost like a Google Sheet type thing to track it. We're not at the full Amazon, Uber Eats technology with our thing, but we are getting better about the conversation and scheduling things out weeks and months and putting them in a plan. Obviously, that shifts as time evolves and what information we have and where the job site stands. So we're getting better at the actual planning of it, but not super technologically driven.
Have any of you used, I know Suffolk, the guy's from Australia, I've talked to him. There's this, like a material tracking software that Suffolk uses. Have you guys any experience with that?
You know the name of it?
I'll have to look it up. I'll let you know. But it's gotten quite a bit of traction on large projects and just really knowing where everything is in the supply chain. It's like a supply chain tracking kind of software.
So, I've probably seen something similar, if not the same product. And every time I look at it, I'm like, you still have to put information in on when it's shipping, which is the problem to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this guy was using like QR codes on everything, so they were just like
right. I guess what I'm saying is, if I'm buying a piece of switchgear or a generator, and I'm told it's going to ship, December 1st of 2025, like that's the date you put in, and then November 24th comes and you find out it's delayed. So the software is only as good as what you can. Right.
What do they say? Shit in, shit out, or whatever the right word is.
But for a general contractor, it makes sense, right? So you can help plan if you actually have it in one spot, right? Rather than getting purchase and delivery, schedules that we all create and send to our customers, to have somebody tabulate them and put them all in the same spreadsheet or same software. That makes sense for me from a GC's point of view.
Yeah. It's Voyage Control.
Voyage
Control just came back to me.
Okay.
How about, and now obviously I'm throwing some stuff out here that we weren't planning on talking about. We've moved away from the outlook a little, but staying in the tech realm, because I have some ideas myself personally, but super early. But any thoughts on places where you can use AI? And it's fine for you all to say, hey, we're looking at it, but nothing is...
It writes all of my, if you ask for a letter of recommendation, ChatGPT, letter of recommendation. That's been my joke for like a year. I've used that before. I will say I'm having fun with it. I think I have 4 different AI apps on my phone, and I go back. I cycle through which ones I pay for at the time. I usually have like 2 subscriptions. Like I'm on Gemini right now, and maybe ChatGPT, but I like kind of playing with them at a high level, kind of business planning, or throwing out, we're looking at geographies. I'll throw some complicated ideas at these things just to see what they spit out. But it's just another data point for myself. As far as like specifically in the business, I don't think we're using a lot of tools. Although what I'm seeing is when you get these bigger enterprise softwares, whether it's your ERP or some of these more modern software packages, they're utilizing a lot of some of these AI tools in the background.
It's integrated. Even like I use Adobe, and it's integrated into Adobe now, where I'll open something up and I can ask it to summarize the document, to do this with it, to do that with it. It's
for instance, like we use Teams a lot, and we've started using the Copilot and the meeting notes out of that, and it's a strong tool, because we used to have someone trying to take in some meeting notes, and now we have AI built into a tool we use already, and we're already comfortable with, and then we can take that, and it's sped up, sort of our tracking of how we're doing our meetings. So,
I've been so the short answer is not really. Other than playing with it a little bit myself too, but in the future, I think it's probably the near future, I'd be very surprised if we don't see some AI tools for estimating. Some real good takeoff tools that won't necessarily replace estimators, But your simple counting of linear feet, counting of certain types of light fixtures, with drywall, I assume you probably, and I envision that's probably a carpet or something like that would be easiest to use. Something like, but I think it's coming. It's just, and I've talked to some. Yeah, I'm doing my best to try to get ahead of it. But that's where I see it probably coming like right away.
We're using it in estimating. We started with 1 license, and we're now up to 3 with an AI-driven takeoff tool primarily, but then it interfaces with the rest of the pricing where the estimators are super valuable. I learned this business by learning how to do takeoffs. I understood that's how I learned how to read plans, was to estimate, not build. I don't think they trusted me with the tools, but or the real tools. They trusted me with a keyboard.
Nothing that plugged in. Yeah.
They trusted me with a keyboard, and that was about it.
Yeah.
But that's where I think, similar to what Mike was saying, that's where we're going to see the first real revolutionary piece. But it's been amazing to plug in different things into ChatGPT and programs like that and extract information so much faster. I've talked about it with some of the stud run shows, but our head of VDC uses a lot of ChatGPT to help build out internal process, whether it's something in Excel or something similar, kind of using it to aid in normal work, but not as like a full-on construction function.
Yeah. I mean, I have to imagine there's a software that will scan the specs and produce submittals out of it. I don't know if you've seen that.
It also reads contracts too.
Yeah. Like it seems like there's a lot of room in there to take. Go ahead, John. You look.
You know what? I was just going to follow up.
You can tell us.
I was going to ask you guys if you think that type of software is good or bad for our businesses. I guess one of my fears would be that eventually we get plans and a general contractor's just sending us labor units to bid.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we're just a commodity labor provider, and so as we said earlier, with some of these jobs we're all looking at now, every contractor's looking at it a little bit differently. But how far off are we from potentially saying, everyone's bidding the exact same thing, and you put your labor units on it, now we're just a labor tool?
Probably.
That's the scary possibility. I'd like to think that there's always going to be that step that Central can be a step ahead of some of our competitors in terms of how we bring greater value than the tool itself. But the reality is these things are going to change the business, and to what extent?
Yeah, I think that's real. Guess. And I think it takes, once it becomes that, I mean, that the submittal is one thing that's usually a pretty low-level task. But as it improves, you eventually have people that lose the skill set to do that because a machine does it.
Yep.
And then where's the value in the person?
Yeah, no, I think what John said is real. I also think what Chris said is you basically, I mean, it makes sense. My labor unit is different than my competitors for, 100 feet of 4-inch pipe. So maybe, that's your, but
it does commoditize, yeah.
It does commoditize it, but we're already a commodity. We already, we all have competition who can do every job that we're doing right now. One of our competitors can also do. And more than likely, your better competition will do fine, right? And the customer will be happy. Let's say, you're 1 and you're 1A on a job, and for a customer, you get this job, you get that job. You're both going to do a good job. So we're already a bit of a commodity. What makes us all a little bit different? People, processes, relationships, strength of with factories, maybe things of that nature. So I don't think that's ever going to leave.
Yeah, I was wondering, what becomes more of a, because you're right, all those things, relationship, all those things differentiate you from someone else. But in that future scenario, what do you think is the big driver of, how do you differentiate yourself in a world where, John described? It's something to think about.
One thing, a lot of these bigger jobs, and I like everything you just said. And while I am scared of being more of a commodity, at the end of the day, these are 18-month journeys that you're on with a team, and you could price it a million different ways, but there's problems are going to come up on those jobs, right? And I think what the GC and the owners really value is when every job's going to have problems, and how does the team react and how does the team deal with it? And I think that's where the people and the culture come back in, and that's really how you have to differentiate yourself. Are you the company that these teams want to go on that journey with?
So maybe that's forget companies, for what's a valuable, I hate to word, that sounds horrible, but from a very calculated standpoint, what's a valuable person in the marketplace moving forward? It's a problem solver, right? Because if it's somebody that can pump out submittals fast, that's great right now. He's a better APM than she is or whatever. But in the future, who's the problem solver that you can put on a job that the owner says, okay, I have to have Chris here or John or Mike, because I know when things go sideways, they're really good at solving problems, right?
I think the world's just getting faster, but it's the people with the knowledge, with the relationships, with the understanding of how things are going to get accomplished, whether it's an estimate or a problem solving or a relationship. But it's the people that can use the tools with their experience. If people are going to rely on experience alone or tools alone, it's not going to work.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Embrace both.
Yeah,
I think that's always been the differentiator with us. Not you said in the future, but it's not just relationship. It's like every job is a prototype. I've said this, I think, on the show before. Yep. Every one we build, even if it's a single story law firm fit up, right? Well, the one on the 15th floor and the one on the 13th floor are different, and there's going to be an issue on each job. Mm-hmm. Who's going to handle it the right way? Right? It may cost more money, but here are your options. So I think that's those problem solvers, whether it be in pre-construction, in estimating, in prefab, in operations, who's gonna solve the problem and move forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. Right now they are as well, but I think moving forward, right now there's a space for a person that is not a problem solver, but is really good at taking something off or whatever, right? I don't think there's a home for those people moving forward. I think you have to become a problem solver. I think those type of jobs go away. They just get taken away.
Those things change, and they always have.
Historically, yeah.
And it's going to take time, but it's who's ready for it. When we were talking about that, an example that I would use is today, I'm guessing about 90% of my competitors are using the same takeoff and estimating software that Central is. Mm-hmm. It's just how we use it and the value that each company brings to it.
Yeah. Awesome.
And the final number is less than them.
Yeah, that's been a problem lately.
The markup's got to go down.
That's been the problem lately.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap this thing up, and we're going to go back to where we started in more of the outlook. What's everybody's thoughts about 2026? What do you see kind of, is there stuff on the books already? Is there conversations? What's your general gut tell you? And let's go ahead. We'll start with John. We'll work backwards this time.
I'm optimistic. Again, I think a lot of the slowdown we're in right now was just caused by a lot of uncertainty over the summer and in the early fall with the election, and again with the interest rates. So we'll see how that all stabilizes over the next couple quarters. I was talking with the guys. I think we have 7 or 8 larger development core and shell jobs that are on hold right now that we've bid a couple times, and so I think it's over $400 million worth of work. So if 1 or 2 of those things start shaking out,
drastic change.
We're looking at a big end of 25 and a big 26 and 27, and then I'm optimistic about the life science, cautiously optimistic about the life science. I do think there's a lot of build out in that space. I think there'll be a lot of tenant work over the next 18 months, and there's a lot of available space. And at the end of the day, one of the reasons Boston's an awesome market, it's the life science capital of the world. We have incredible universities and we have incredible hospitals. So I think it'll come back.
Yeah, it seems like so far it's playing out like it always has. Things slow down, the institutional work, schools, hospitals, and public, they keep everybody trudging along through the low spot, and then when things pick back up.
Yeah, I'll go next. Mostly, I agree with you 100%. I think cautiously optimistic is how I'd start. And I do think, and I don't know if it's so much an administration issue as far as at the federal level, but it's really, the Fed itself and those interest rates. And I think there's going to be a battle there. Who knows if there's new tariffs coming in that are going to affect pricing, and then, again, that's inflation, and it's going to affect some of the Fed and what they do with their interest rates. I do know that, we all know that there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines waiting for a point or two in that interest rate to come down, and boom, we're all screaming, right?
Yep.
So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we've got a bit of a plan in place by growing in other areas like service and doing some things that are a little bit more efficient in the office to stay profitable, stay busy, and when it comes back, we're going to grind hard. And that's kind of like what we're looking at now. Let's pick a couple, grind hard, and as the market picks back up,
hopefully you're in a good position.
Hopefully we're in a good spot. That's right.
Feels similar. It's definitely going to be a grind to win back, and I think as it returns, these good habits that companies develop when they're slow are going to stick with us for a while. So it will be a high competition even as the market starts to return. But that said, I think companies or institutions, hospitals, K through 12 with the state or universities have money, and they're ready to do it. I think that there's been a little bit of a pullback, and now they're going to move forward. For people that are looking to borrow the money, the interest rates is the wild card, and to the extent that they are able to go down, then obviously that'll put some fuel on the fire.
While I have you guys, I want to squeeze every last minute out of you. How about within Massachusetts, are you seeing big projects shift like geographically at all? Like, you seeing less Cambridge and more Lynn, or like, are you seeing a shift there at all to like Lynn comes to mind because it seems to be a place where there's some action that's happening, or is it Fall River? Are you seeing other communities within Massachusetts start to grow, or is it that life science belt on 495 or up on 128? Like, are you seeing the bigger projects happen outside of Boston proper?
Okay.
I think I'm seeing more. The thing we talked about earlier with Rhode Island and Maine and other places having work. I always think about in the context of Central is like, I think about it where our biggest job is that there's times when we did like the MGM in Springfield. Western Mass was hot because of that one job, or we did some work at Holyoke and Westfield over the years. So my view tends to be very specific to Central
what you're
in that
seeing.
regard. But I do think that there's a lot of work throughout the region.
Like, so I guess it may be another way. So do you see it as like less centralized? It's kind of spread a little more?
I think that's a fair assessment.
I think you'd probably know better than me as a union contractor. We kind of go where the unions build, right?
Right.
I will tell you that we've had some great success with the Worcester local recently. We've got two large jobs going on there now with
it's a lot of work.
Another one or two small ones that have been, the staff out there as far as the field workers have been great. The union's been great to work with. So we'll do more work out there, and we're looking for some, quite frankly. But as a union contractor, when you talk about Lynn, when you talk about other areas outside 128, even getting out to 495 area, a lot of that's non-union.
That's going open.
So I just don't see a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty narrow view, but that's what we need is a couple data centers to be built in.
Well, I want to.
Let's go.
Does anyone start to like have? I know some GCs that are starting to look at just nuclear and like as the potential if that starts getting built out, the smaller reactor type stuff. Just going to conferences now to start to learn about that type of stuff. But so I'm curious what Jon thinks about the region, and then if there's any other spaces like that, like the nuclear or data centers. I think we have the energy problem, but
there's a funny story in our office that 30 years ago, when my father needed a lot of work, he told the guys, like, listen, if someone calls you and asks you to build them a nuclear reactor, you say yes. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, there you go.
It's kind of a funny story. We haven't looked much into those type of markets. We have a bit on the equipment side, trying to build some data center equipment, but not so much on the nuclear yet. And I would say, we're still pretty focused in the Boston, Cambridge, Somerville kind of area. That's where we're focused. We're pretty focused on the hospitals inside 128 and in the universities. So that's where we're seeing the most opportunities now. So it's kind of where we're focusing.
Yeah. I mean, the Worcester's an interesting one like that. Having just been out there lately, is quite a bit going on. Like, I know Dimio's building out there, and I'm sure Consigli's still building out there. So you're probably having some decent union shops going there as well. But, all right, this was fantastic. And you guys have any other nuggets before we close? Beautiful.
All good.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, I very much appreciate you guys taking this time. It was great to have a sample of people that have their pulse, because you can read some articles or you can, but nothing like, hey, what bids are coming through the door? What's your thing look like? This was very real, and I think people are going to love it. So I appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.